The REGRESS specification requires us to consider the Kalam cosmological argument with particular reference to William Lane Craig. Like Aquinas' version, the Kalam version is derived from Aristotle, but has evolved via the Islamic world. William Lane Craig, as a modern American Christian philosopher, has developed this argument further. Kalam is an Arabic word which means argue or discuss. It is a posteriori in the sense that it relies upon empirical evidence of the cosmos and the phenomena within it in order to come to its conclusions. However, it does also use reasoning derived from the world of mathematics, and as a result, elements of it are a priori in nature. Ultimately, it aims to come to the conclusion that God is the first cause of the universe. In particular, there are two parts to the Kalam version of the cosmological argument. Firstly, it denies the possibility of infinite regress. This it has in common with Aquinas' version, of course. However, the reason it denies this is mathematical, a priori logic, rather than empirically based. Secondly, this argument tries to give us a reason to accept that this is a personal God, that this is the first cause of the universe. This is something that Aquinas had struggled to do. To begin with, the Kalam version looks at the issue of infinite regress. To say that something is infinite means that it is endless or limitless. Something that is growing continually by having one more item added to it is known as successive addition or a potential infinite. It is not really infinite yet because it is being added to. It is possible to think of time as being potentially infinite, as one more day is continually added onto the previous one. We exist within a potentially infinite universe because as time passes, each day is added on from the last, each hour is added to the last, and so on. A potential infinite grows and develops, but isn't actually infinite. This would mean that this universe isn't actually infinite. Actual infinite is a concept found in set theory. It refers to collections of things with an infinite number of members. It is not growing towards infinity because it is infinite already. A part within an actual infinite set is equal to the whole set because it is infinite. Some philosophers, such as those who argue for the Kalam argument for God's existence, would say that an actual infinite set cannot exist because you cannot add or subtract from an actual infinite, since it would always remain the same number, infinite. An actual infinite is complete at all times, and many philosophers regard this as illogical. To give an example, if you were to imagine an infinite library, the number of books within it would be infinite. The books with green spines would have to be equal to the number of books with black spines, yet the books with green spines would also be equal to the complete number of books in the entire library. This is a paradox. It cannot be true as it is illogical, yet it cannot not be true either, if the library is actually infinite. I couldn't take a book out of this library. If I did, there would still be an infinite number of books in it. Equally, I cannot return a book and add to its number, as the number of books would remain the same. As a result of this paradox, many scholars argue that there can be no such thing as an actual infinite. This means that the universe cannot be actually infinite. Lane Craig uses this idea of set theory in order to formulate his Kalam version. The history of the universe was formed by one event following on after another event. This is successive addition and is not actually infinite. In an actual infinite universe, we would never reach today, yet we clearly have reached today, so the universe cannot be infinite. This universe cannot be actually infinite because if it were, all events within it would also be infinite. This would mean that, for instance, there would be as many wars as there were other events put together, and this is illogical. All this means that the universe is a collection that is formed by successive addition. It therefore must be finite, since it cannot be infinite. Since it is finite, it must have had a beginning, and things that begin are caused to begin. Nothing can cause itself, as this is also illogical. Nothing can be the cause of itself, since it would have to exist before it existed in order to bring itself about. The universe then must have had a first cause. This is the first part of Craig's argument, which shows that it is necessary to deny infinite regress. However, at present this first cause does not have to be a personal God with any of the theistic characteristics. It could be anything that it is uncaused itself. So Len Craig's Kalam has to do more. Craig here wants to prove that the beginning of the universe must be as a result of a personal creator. He has already demonstrated that the universe must have had a beginning. Now, if the universe had a beginning, it is necessary to establish what the possible causes must have been. Craig shows that the two clear choices are either it occurred as a result of natural, impersonal causes, or that it was a personal cause that acted deliberately out of choice. Craig argues that the idea that the first cause was not personal but was natural seems to be illogical. This is because the beginning of the universe was the beginning of everything. In this case, there couldn't have been any rules of nature before the universe existed, since nature didn't exist and there were no laws of it. The laws of nature describe what happens within nature, but they don't exist independently of nature. This means they cannot have existed before nature did. This leaves us with the option of the first cause being a personal being who deliberately caused the universe. This personal being must be very close to the God of classical theism. Firstly, God must be eternal in order to avoid being part of the chain of successive addition. This God must have created ex nihilo, out of nothing. He must also be incorporeal, timeless, intelligent and powerful in order to avoid being part of the whole process that we are trying to account for. These qualities are all qualities of the God of classical theism. Craig gives three reasons why the first cause must be a personal God. Firstly, he points out that there are two kinds of causal explanations. There are the scientific explanations, such as the Big Bang, which are fine as far as they go, but they are limited. According to science, there can be nothing before this event, but this does not give any kind of personal explanation. A deliberate act by a personal creator is the only explanation which accounts for both. Secondly, Craig points out that there is nothing else that anyone has been able to suggest that would have the qualities that are necessary to create the universe other than God. God is the only being capable of causing the universe that can also have necessary existence, can exist outside time and space, and be able to deliberately act to bring the universe about. In the absence of other possibilities, God is a reasonable conclusion. Finally, Craig appeals to agent causation. He points out that in order to be a first cause and bring the universe about, the infinite agent must have intellect. This is because, if it were impersonal, it would be unable to act. This means that such an agent must have the ability to choose to act according to its own will in order to bring the universe into existence.